True Story Media.
Some names and details have been changed. This episode contains mature themes and can be difficult for some listeners. Please see the show notes for details and resources. So I got a message from a woman named Lou. Fuck that guy. Very scary stuff to think that humans are capable of creating such multiple levels of manipulation and careless but careful chaos to those around them. I was in a similar situation with a guy who I now know to have gone under other aliases, identities.
So I had some time to kill. My friend was taking me for lunch because I had gotten engaged like 2 weeks ago. So I lit a smoke and went for a walk. And I walked past this barber shop, and there he was in the window, trimming someone's hair, like this far away from my face, just on the other side. My heart stopped. My body screamed. Just da-dum, da-dum. You know, you can feel it. You think it's going to pop out. I couldn't breathe. It's like running around the corner from a monster. You're like trying to hide behind the wall. Like in a movie, my body was a smoke alarm, but I couldn't see the fire.
You probably think this story is about you. I'm Brittany Yard. This story belongs to Lou.
That was the first time I actually sat down with my partner, and I was like, so maybe this is why I had that reaction.
Get me Will Trent, ABC Tonight.
I don't even know where he is.
Will Trent is back.
You thought you could hide forever? Time to come home.
The series that's being called one of the best network procedurals.
We're going to solve this case.
Featuring new cast member Gina Rodriguez.
I'm a prosecutor. We deal in truth and facts.
Maybe everybody should try that, huh?
Will Trent, the 2-part season premiere, begins tonight on ABC and stream on Hulu.
This is Lou. She lives in Ireland, and she reached out to me after the release of the first season. Lou is talking about a reaction that she had when she was arguing with her current boyfriend. When he raised his hand to scratch his ear during this argument, she cowered, and both of them were surprised by that reaction because they did not have any violence in their relationship, and this was something that she wouldn't have expected herself to do.
He was like, I've never laid a hand on you. Why would you have that reaction? It definitely wasn't anything he's done, and he never. I remember we were driving somewhere. You know, they say it's easier to tell someone something when you're driving because you're not looking at them. I told my partner, and he was so stupid. He was like, you got butterflies. I was like, no, these are not butterflies. These are like giant, stabbing, jumping around frogs. I survived a relationship with John.
That's the moment when Lou realized she needed to get closure on her relationship with John from 10 years before. Some of the responses from last season were people wanting to fit my trauma into a neat and tidy box that has this beginning, middle, and end. I just had a relationship with a narcissist. My sister passed, or the death of my grandma. None of those are the most sensational things to happen. But my story is not just the outcome of what those traumas did to me, but how I lived my life after. There's no beginning or end to the things that affect us in our lives. Our ability to connect is rooted in stories. I just want to learn.
I'm the youngest of 4. Grew up in a normal household, mom, dad, my 3 siblings. My grandfather would have been like the worst father possible and would have been very physically abusive with the kids. And consequently, my dad was physically abusive. My grandfather actually turned out to be the most amazing grandfather that ever there was, ever. So it was like he got a second chance with the kids that maybe he didn't have to put up with 24 hours a day. And he was just amazing.
Generational trauma is so complicated. In Lou's case, her grandfather wasn't the best dad to her father, but he really stepped in and gave Lou the care and support that she needed to thrive when she was growing up. And Lou and her dad struggled in their relationship sometimes, and it sounds like her grandfather probably understood that part of that was on him and really took Lou under his wing to mend that.
So he was my protector in an odd circle, full circle. He would always jump in and sort of show up at the most random times when I'd be getting in trouble. I was 3 days old when he first took me out for coffee. Well, obviously I wasn't having coffee. But yeah, like straight out of the hospital, just can I have her? And that was it all the way up until I was 18. I kind of like took the piss out of him a lot, which like the other kids maybe didn't. And we had this kind of special relationship where like, you know, even the last thing I said to him was I held up my hand like this on his car. And I was like, that is the amount of space I can find on your car without a scratch. Like, this is not a bumper car. He was just my number one supporter. There was nothing I couldn't do. And when I did mess up, and I did, he was always there. You know, I'd run out of petrol and he would come, put petrol in my car and then hide like a €5 note somewhere in my car and not tell me. And then the next time I run out of petrol, he's like, yeah, I knew this would happen. It's hidden in your glove box. It's like, I knew you wouldn't learn.
She just knew that she could count on him for anything. And even when she didn't know she needed him, he already anticipated and was there for her. And Granny used to do the exact same thing for me. Even when I didn't realize that I was struggling, Granny would just come in with this amazing advice or $100 because I had outstanding parking tickets and I couldn't renew my tabs.
He was perfect up until the day, like he didn't move into a nursing home. He didn't stop driving. He was 92, but he was completely cognitively perfect. So he rang my uncle, who he lived with, and at like 11 o'clock. And he was like, oh, just don't worry about me. I'll be home late. And he was like, yeah, where are you? He was like, oh, just the hospital. And he was like, fuck's sake. So he drove in, was like, see this man, he's 92. He's got chest pain. Come on. So they checked him over. They said, look, you're fine, but don't drive home. So my uncle drove him home. He went to bed, got up the next day. My uncle left and said, do not leave this house. I know you want your car, but just rest. And he was like, oh yeah, I got it. So he left within like 30 minutes of my uncle leaving and went in to get his car, we assume, but we don't know where he went. He was found the next day in the back garden with that day's newspaper in his hand. So we know he survived until the next day, but we don't know where he was. He had a heart attack and just gone. Now, it was nice for him to go that way. He wouldn't have wanted to lose his independence, but it was still not great, you know, wandering around, ringing hospitals, all that kind of stuff. And I had a good circle of friends who knew what he meant, and they called and they said, hey, we're all down in the pub, we're waiting for you. And I was like, I don't want to go out. And they were like, yeah, you do. Come on, let's go. So I was in the pub a lot for the following couple of months. My friends were all in college. I was not. And so they were going out like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights till like 2 a.m. for €2 drinks. And I was like, yeah, I'm going too. So it was a bit of a haze. Like I was really lost because he was the only person that ever fully like believed I was just the best thing ever. I take so many photographs of everything now and videos because I was left with so little because of the time. I know it's really morbid, but I want my child to have as much evidence as possible to hold on to because, you know.
I don't think it's morbid. I think it's amazing. It's one of the pluses of all the technology that we have today is that there's just so much that you can have and, you know, look back on.
So his voicemail was his name. Please leave a message. Which button? What? I just loved it. So it was the only piece of his voice that I had left, really. So I used to just ring it until they disconnected the phone just to hear it.
Granny's death was unexpected and it happened so quickly. There were text messages and an email that I had gotten from her right before she passed. And I think I probably read them a million times until my phone broke and I had to get a new phone and lost them. But the last email I got from her was meant to be a text message, but she had sent it as an email on accident. And so the formatting was super weird. And when I responded to it, she's like, "Why are you emailing me?" And it's like, well, because you emailed me first. And she's like, "I did not." And there were times when I called and just wanted to hear Granny's voicemail because it was something that I had heard for years. Her voicemail had been the same forever. I was really sad when they shut off her phone. The start of the new year is the perfect time to get organized, set goals, and prioritize what matters most. For me, this year, top priority is my financial wellness. It feels really important right now. Thanks to Rocket Money, my goals feel achievable. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscription, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Their easy dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. You can create a personalized budget with custom categories to help your spending stay on track. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/Brittany today. That's rocketmoney.com/BRITTANI. rocketmoney.com/Brittany.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
It was like standing on a chair and someone just rips it out from under you because you were like, I was like, oh shit, how do I believe this by myself? And that's when I met John. So I was going out and I was messy. This is the time when you brought cameras with you. You had a digital camera and then you go home and upload 250 photos to Facebook. I kept going out with these friends of mine, and this friend of mine was like, "You are a disaster. You lose everything all the time. So just give me your bag and you won't lose me. We will stick together." And I was like, yeah, I got it. And then before I knew it, it was like 2 a.m. and I couldn't find him. So we got kicked out, the closing time. And he was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't even get a payphone. I had nothing. So I was stumbling around the streets of town, crying. And, when you're drunk, everything is just that much worse.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I spent 5 hours crying in bed last night drinking wine with the I don't know. It was very much the I'm going to be alone forever. And then I did realize that I forgot to put my estrogen patch on. So I think it might have just been hormonal. So I know exactly.
You never want to admit it though, do you?
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. And I was sitting I was walking and he stopped and he was like, "Are you okay? I don't want to alarm you, but are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I lost my friends and I can't find them. I'm never going to find them again." I want to say 6'4" and I'm 5'2". So that's a lot. Really long jacket, less Pink Panther, more hot bodyguard. And he was just really gentle giant. He was like, "Look, you can use my phone. Do you know their numbers?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And I couldn't get through to them straight away. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to make a move or anything, but I'll walk you towards the police station.
When John first meets Lou, and Lou is in this vulnerable position where she's lost her friends, she doesn't have her phone, he comes in as this knight in shining armor, but even in their first interaction, he's giving clues as to how he is manipulating her, because he's saying things like, I'm not going to hit on you, but you're beautiful. But I'm not going to make a move and you shouldn't trust me. But here, trust me, I'm going to take you, to the police station and get help. And that roller coaster is what trips up our brain initially, where you're like, oh, no, he's a good guy because he said you need to be safe. And you don't know if I'm safe. And we think that means that they must be safe because they're acknowledging it.
And then that way you can make a call there, or you can arrange to meet them there, and it's a safe space. You shouldn't trust me because you just met me, so let's go there. He walked me there and he was like, oh, I'm definitely not going to make a move. Like, you're so beautiful, but I'm not going to make a move. I want to make that really clear because you're vulnerable and you're drunk. And then just as I had found my friends and I was getting into the taxi, he was like, but you can buy me a drink to say thanks. So I did. And we had texted a little bit, but he didn't like texting. He liked phone calls, and my generation doesn't like phone calls. He was 25 and I was 19. So that's a big gap for that age. And I think my friends were a little bit like, is this a good idea? I think actually one of them followed me into town. He was going for a drink with someone and he was like, look, I'm just going to go sit nearby to just make sure you're okay. And it was like a week later, I think. And I drove to the bar and he had a lot of pints and it went from there. He was very complimentary, very gentlemanly, very articulate, which is something that boys or men my age wouldn't have been necessarily. It would have been like, oh, you're hot. Whereas he was very complimentary around everything, like your mind is amazing, you're blah, 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 blah. So I was just bamboozled, like, he's so smart and mature and like, this is amazing. And the whole 6'4" thing was very helpful. Again, this thing of like, oh, I really want to take you back to mine, but I'm not gonna because I want to take this slow and I'm a gentleman and you're so amazing. And I was like, oh, thanks.
So he sort of made everything seem like your idea, like it's your choice. I'm not going to do this. So, if you want to, I guess I will. Kanan did a lot of those same things when we were first having our dates. He would say things like, I'd love to have you come over to my house, but I don't want to go too fast. Like, I don't want you to feel pressure, but if you want to, we don't have to do anything, but you could come over. But then his actions, like when I went to his house for the first time, were very calculating in maneuvering me into a situation that became sexual very quickly. Danielle had the same experience with Kanan as well, where he was like, we're going to take this slow. And then she was the one who felt like she was making that choice. It's just so crafty.
Yeah, because the first time I stayed in his house, again, it was like, oh, I'm not going to ask you to stay. And definitely, like, it's up to you. And I was like, well, I really want to.
John definitely used the way in which he presented his side to give Lou this false sense of security in her own ability to make choices, but also in not feeling that direct pressure from him. But there still is that underlying manipulation that happens, that he's going to get what he wants and she's going to believe that it was her decision the whole time. It's why gaslighting becomes so effective.
It was all very much like, oh no, you're in control. But like, I wasn't. And the longer the relationship went on, the less I was. Like, I was completely not.
As Lou and John's relationship progressed, she kept a lot to herself. She was living with her parents at the time. Lou's friends weren't particularly fond of him, and so she was a little isolated in that relationship. If you have to keep something a secret, or the people that know you or care about you don't feel comfortable with that person, it's such a huge red flag, but it also furthers the ability for this person to control you.
If anyone can hear what I'm saying, please help us. We were attacked by some kind of animal.
From the director of The Invisible Man and Blumhouse, producers of The Black Phone.
My husband was infected.
What is happening to me?
Daddy, is that you? Run! Hurry, Mommy, it's coming!
Don't you lay a hand on her!
Wolfman, directed by Lee Winnell. Under 17, not admitted without parent. Only in theaters January 17th.
So we lived on opposite sides of the city, like the very furthest. He didn't drive so much. I didn't know at the time, but he wasn't legally allowed to. He was caught for driving under the influence. And then he was given like a 5-year ban or something, and he ignored it and drove and ignored it and drove. So he just didn't listen to what he was told. So I did all the driving. Plus, I was 19 living at home with my parents, and I was not bringing him home. So I would say to my mom on a Friday night, I'm going off to Sarah's, see you Sunday. And that would be it. Because it took like nearly an hour to get there. So when I got there, I was just staying put. We were in his house quite a lot. We didn't go out much. His mother lived in the house, and I knew her. She was like the anxious type, if you get me, like kind of like highly strung. He was the boss in that house, and he shouldn't have been. Like, he would get angry and throw all of her pots and pans into the garden, and she'd just be like, oh, please stop. He'd take her car without asking when he was not allowed to drive at all. Just stuff like that. Like, he wasn't nice to her at all, which now, massive red flag. But then 19, probably not a big fan of my own mother.
Hindsight in relationships is brutal, because when you have a chance to step out of it, you really see how many red flags there were, or how many things you dismissed to make that love work. At what point in the relationship did it start becoming
volatile? So he was texting this girl. The phone kept pinging, and I was like, who is she? And he was like, oh, she used to rent a room here in the house. So it was a 3-bed house, and it's quite normal to rent out a bedroom. And I was like, okay, well, why are you texting her now? And he was like, oh, we used to sleep together. And I was like, okay, so why are you texting her now? And he was like, oh, we're swing partners. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, so we're still having sex. And I was like, oh, good. Like, and he was like, no, you can't be mad about this. And I was like, yeah, I can. A man cannot go to a swing party on his own, but a female can. So he was using her to go to parties so she didn't have to go on her own, and he could still be in the community. And that's why he was fucking her while we were together. And then he said, well, like, I've been like this my whole life. If you can't deal with that, then, you know, I was swinging before I met you.
But he never mentioned it before, which you would think that would come up. It's kind of a big part.
Yeah. And usually it's something you do with your partner. Like, it's usually a decision that you and somebody make. So eventually I was like, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, you were like this before we met, and who am I to change you? And you are so right.
Lou didn't find out until well into their relationship that John lived this swinging lifestyle, which, if that is what you do and you and your partner have agreed, then there's nothing wrong with it. But when you don't communicate that with your partner, and then kind of in the middle of a relationship drop in that, oh, I'm a swinger, we're going to go to this party and you just have to be okay with it, that isn't care and communication about different sexual desires that you have at all. It's so manipulative for him to say, you can't change me. This is who I was before I met you. people that I know that are in the swinging community, this is not how you treat your partner. And this is not how you handle situations like this.
And he brought me to a party. I mean, I don't know if you've seen programs on it or anything. Like, there's just willies everywhere. And condoms and lube. And then he went off and left me. I don't know where he went. He promised me he wouldn't do anything, but I wasn't going to follow him because I was petrified. Friend was at a gig close by, and she rang me and she was like, "Are you in town tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm at a swing party." She was like, "What the?" So she was like, "Firstly, can I come? And secondly, we're going home. Let's go." And then there was New Year's when we spent New Year's together. We went into town. The pub's closed. He was like, "Oh, I have friends at a party nearby." And there was this girl dancing. She said she had like a 6-month-old son or something. And I said, "Oh my God, you look incredible to have a 6-month-old son." And he was like, "Stop fucking talking to her. She knows that I swing and she's going to think you're trying to come on to her." I was like, "But I'm not. I'm just telling her she's beautiful. Like, she's your friend." And he was like, "No, they know me and they'll interpret it wrong and blah, blah, blah." So I was annoyed and I went to leave, and my bag was in a bedroom. So I went to get my bag, and he pushed me into the bathroom and shut the door. And I was like, "What are you doing?" I want to leave. And he was like, "No, you're not leaving." And I was like, "No, just like calm down. I just want to go home. It's fine. We'll talk tomorrow. Like, it's probably 2 a.m. again." And he hit me, and I sat on the edge of the bath, and there was a bath in the bathroom, and I just froze. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to aggravate him more, but equally I had nowhere to go. Like, the door was locked. He moved in some way, and I went to go for the door, and he pushed me into the bath, backwards into the bath. And it really hurt. So eventually, I can't remember the full detail, but I managed to get away. And that friend who was holding my bag the night I met him, I rang him and I was like, "I'm stuck." And he was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I genuinely didn't. Like, I hadn't a clue because I had never been in this area before. I still to this day don't know where I was. And my friend, who was amazing, jumped into a taxi, and he was like, "Okay, talk to me. Tell me what you can see. I'll talk to the taxi driver." He drove around for like an hour trying to find me. And he did. And he took me home. And then a couple of weeks later, I was straight back over to John. And he was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know." He used a lot of the phrases that I now hear and I will not tolerate. And even I said to my daughter yesterday, "Why do you make me tell you everything 3 times?" And I was like, "She's not making me. Like, you made me do this. You made me mad. And that's why this happened. And this is your fault." And it's not my fault. You just made me so mad and I had no control over it. And it's just because I love you so much. And that's how I get so upset. And I'm so sorry. Honestly, I didn't mean to hurt you. It was an accident. And dumbass went back.
It's not being a dumbass. It's being in that moment and trusting that person that it was, a one-off, and also being in a position where you love someone. After this incident, John's rage increased, followed by infinite "I'm sorries" and "I love yous." It creates this cycle where your cortisol levels are just so spiked. It's nearly impossible to make a rational decision. It's almost like you start to numb your own self, and that's when you stop trusting your own thoughts and reactions, and you're just trying to keep the peace in your home, in your space, and get back to the good parts, because at one point it was good. You start believing that it's your fault.
We went to a funeral in the countryside. He was in this biker group online, and one of the guys had died. So they wanted to do a guard of honor, I think, all the way up to the grave. Usually we do it like hurls like that, but it was bikes. And there was drinks after the funeral, and then more drinks, and then back to his friend's house nearby. And his friend had said, look, stay here for the night. Like, don't drive home. He probably knew that your man was prone to having a few drinks and getting in the car. It was his car. I wasn't driving. His mom's car. We had a fight in the car because actually he was like, oh, we're going home. And I said, no, like you've been drinking. I'm not going home with you. I'm going to stay here. And he was like, this is my friend's house. You can't stay here. And I was like, I'm not driving an hour and a half with you drunk. Like, I'm just not. So he pulled out the glove box of the car and threw it at me in the passenger seat. I got out of the car and I ran back towards his friend's house, which is kind of scary because it was the middle of nowhere and it was his friend. So I was like, 50-50 chance here. And I got nearly to their front door and he pushed me over so hard into the ground that I had to pick pieces of gravel out of my back, like my skin in my back. His friend and his friend's wife let me in and they were like, what are you doing? Like, get away from him. And I was like, you're his friend. And they were like, no, get away from him. You are young, you are gorgeous, you are far smarter than this asshole. Get away from him. Yes, he's our friend, but no. Like, no. So obviously I just put my earplugs in, decided not to take any of their advice. I think we actually may have driven home like an hour later in the car. Same again, woke up the next morning. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean.
Lou and John were together for about a year and a half, from the time when she was 19 to nearly 21.
It kind of got to the stage where he was drinking, like, nearly having beer in his cornflakes. Like, it was wake up, have a can. It was just all day, every day. And the smell, even when my partner has a beer now, I'm like, brush your teeth. And he's only having one, not the 25 that he would have had, but the smell, that stale beer smell. Like, I had given him money, I'd lent him money, and he had access to my bank account. Like, I gave him, because that is who I was at the time. I was like, here, take it all. Like, my dad was the same. I think I just kind of got tired of it eventually. He left me at a gig, and again, a friend of his was like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, oh, it's fine. And the friend got me on a bus back to Dublin. And then he was like, okay, so you're going home now. And I was like, well, my car is in his house. And he was like, for fuck's sake.
Lou did leave and she moved on with her life.
I closed everything up. So I put up really big walls, like really, really big walls.
Lou began dating someone that she had known since she was 15. That's now her husband.
My partner now, I'm fairly sure I've loved since I was like 15. Like, there's a sign right behind the laptop and it says, it was always you. Like, it's a poster I bought him. And it just is.
About 10 years had passed before Lou saw John again in the barbershop on that afternoon when she went to meet her friend for lunch. She didn't expect to react the way that she did.
Growing up, like, you weren't allowed to cry. Crying is self-pity. And when you're crying, you're only thinking about yourself and it's selfish. And it's taken me like 35 years to get out of that. I'm less likely to cry over physical pain because I wasn't allowed to as a child. So if I hurt myself, I'm more likely to curse and walk off than to cry.
But when she saw him,
my heart stopped. My body screamed, just da-dum, da-dum. You know, you can feel it. You think it's going to pop out.
She realized that she had not healed from his abuse.
I had a lot of processing and I had 2 more deaths in the family. And I think I was holding up all of these plates and all of a sudden they all just had to drop. And then I had to pick them back up and put them back together in a different way. But he'd lain pretty dormant. Every so often I would look him up on social media or his mom to see, could I see anything? But nothing. I began to think, where is that fucker?
Coming up in the next chapter of You Probably Think This Story's About You.
So that's when I reached out to the girl.
I think for the two of us, it's not just our story. Our stories are kind of intertwined.
You can support the show by joining us on Patreon. Episodes are available early and ad-free. That's patreon.com/BrittanyArd. Or find a link below in the show notes. Our executive producer is Brittany Ard. Our senior producer and editor is Sydney Gladue. Sound engineering by Sean Simmons. Graphic design by Nigella Sharma. Opening theme by Youth Star and Miscellaneous. You probably think The Stories About You is a production of BDE Unlimited Productions. You can follow Britt for updates at brittany.ard on all social media platforms. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. And also, give us a rate or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.